Hello, everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If this is your first time tuning in, my name is Adrielle, and I'm currently narrating a story of my life dating back from January 2016. In the previous episode, I narrated February 2020, and I talked about how I moved out of Douglas. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about how I moved in with Ruth and everything I went through when I was living with Ruth, and all the other stuff I went through pertaining to an unlikely story. So yeah, and I think that's about it. So here it goes. So it's February 13th. Like I said in the previous episode, I was in my car, like having dinner, waiting for Ruth to come back home. So she eventually texted me that she's on her way around probably after 6:30 ish, whatever. I'm like, okay, I'm in this away. And Ruth's apartment was not far from Douglas. It was like 15 minutes away. So I knew whenever she got home, it wasn't gonna take that long, and I was just gonna meet her by 7. So eventually, probably like 15 minutes or 20 minutes. No, not 20, but probably like 10 or 15 minutes later. That's when I started to drive to her place. I get there. I bring in a couple of stuff. I didn't want to bring in everything because the whole packing and moving was really overwhelming. So I just packed a couple stuff in that night, and then the next day I was gonna bring all the rest or whatever. So I get there, we're talking. I let her know what ended up happening with the moving and storing stuff. I told her about the maintenance guy who helped fix my place up, and so we're talking, and we start talking about jobs. And then she tells me, she's like, "Yeah, Adriel, send me your resume so I can send to my aunt." And I'm like, what about the one I sent you back in I think was it June or July or October, sometime 2019. I sent her the resume. And then she was like, "Yeah, my aunt said that was bad." I was like, "The second one I sent to you?" She was like, "Yeah." I was like, "That's bad too?" She was like, "Yeah." So now at this point, y'all, I'm like, I don't know what this lady wants from me. Like, what does she want my resume to look like? I've tried. And to be honest, it's not making any sense because I feel like they're not really telling me what's bad about my resume. So in my head, it's like, listen, if they don't want to help, they ain't got to help. But it's like, I don't, at this point, I don't get it. I don't get it. Now, here's another thing, too. With me, I didn't really care, too, that she said my resume was bad because whatever job she was going to give me or get to me, it was in London. So I didn't care. But I was like, hey, you never know who knows who and where my resume can land. It can land with someone who knows someone that knows someone in London. So I said, okay, I will, fix up my resume. But at this point, yeah, I was just so confused as to what they wanted from me. I didn't get it. I really didn't get it. So I'm going through my email and I see that one of the jobs I applied to at London, it wasn't a data scientist role. It was an analyst role though, but not data scientist. I had moved to the next round. So I was like, oh my goodness. I move out of Douglas and I see that the application I sent in, it moved to the next round. So now I'm thinking everything is setting in place. Everything's moving. 2020 is that year. So because I had completed the assessments back in 2019, I didn't need to complete any other ones because they were valid for 12 months. So in my mind, I'm like, hey, I'm just waiting to hear back from them. And yeah, like everything's going to be good. Everything really is going to be good. So I remember just being in the apartment talking to Ruth and telling Ruth, like, hey, Ruth, I'll sleep on your couch. Actually, I have a air bed. I can bring that in. She's like, oh, no, you can sleep on my bed. And I'm like, well, if I sleep on your bed, where are you going to sleep? She's like, oh, no, I'll sleep on the couch. I was like, are you serious? She's like, yeah. She's like, I always fall asleep on the couch because I'm always studying. So there's no point. You can just stay on my bed and I'll just stay on the couch. And also, I stay on the floor too. I was like, yo, are they really? Now, here's the thing about Ruth's program. Ruth's program was very rigorous. Like, she would have 4 exams on one day, possibly 7 in one week. Like, it was so bad. So when she said that she sleeps on her couch and she stays on the floor and she's up all night, I could believe her. But I didn't know she was gonna let me stay on her bed. So I was like, oh my goodness, okay. This is looking good. So we're there talking. So here's the thing. I've been to Ruth's apartment before and back in 2019, but I don't think I never had to like a tour. So I remember asking her, like, hey, do you have a storage space in your balcony? She was like, no. And I'm like, what do you mean? Because in our balcony, there's a door. And typically, a lot of places, when there's a door in the balcony, that's typically the storage space. Because I know I had one at Douglas. So I'm like, you have a door? Like, what's that door? She was like, I've never opened that door before. I'm like, so it's not a storage space? She was like, no, I actually don't know what that is. I don't have the key to it. Now I want y'all to remember this because it comes back later on. Comes back later on in 2020. So I remember just thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, I wonder what that place is. Anyways, we're just, hanging out talking. And then eventually nighttime comes and then I go to sleep. February 14th was the day that I was scheduled to go to LabCorp to take the H. pylori test. So I go that afternoon and I go and take the test. I'm there taking the test. I had to drink this solution. Y'all, it was so hard I had to drink the whole cup. It was so hard swallowing the solution. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I think the results are going to come out positive because the way it was hard for me to drink it. I think I had H. pylori. Between February 17th and February 20th, I started having dreams about London, and I'm just like believing, okay, this new position that I applied for that I moved to the second round, this is probably it. I'm starting having dreams about London. That's happening too. At this time, y'all, even though I was thankful and grateful of how God was making things happen, I remember questioning why I was staying at Roots Place. So I want to say, I don't know, probably after the whole Melissa situation, I want to say the Melissa situation in 2018. Yeah, after that, y'all, anytime I knew God was taking me somewhere or doing something, I'd always question why. Like, what's behind, like, why? Why? What's the purpose behind this, Lord? So I just started questioning stuff. By the time I moved to Ruth's place, even though I said, y'all, in December that if I gotta stay on Ruth's couch, I gotta do it in order to stay in Atlanta. But why? Because God could have given me a job, and that job could have, helped me get an apartment and I have my own place. Why do I have to squat with my friend? I didn't get it, y'all. And got to a point where I was like constantly asking that question my first week there and even weeks after. And it wasn't that she was doing anything wrong, but I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand what was going on and why am I still in the wilderness? Why, like, what are you like, God? What are you trying to do? I remember thinking to myself that I feel like God brought me here to help her. Now, like I said, y'all, Ruth's program was rigorous. Like, I don't even think she didn't even have time for herself. So I'm like, hey, if God wants me to help her, like, I don't know, cook lunch, cook dinner, cook breakfast, like if she needs someone to talk to, because her program was like, it was intense. So I was like, maybe that's what God brought me here. But I remember just feeling inside of me that God brought me here to help her. I want y'all to remember that because it comes back later on in the story. So it's February 20th, and at this time, I'm just thinking about London, how I'm just one step closer to London. I'm so close. And also at this time, I want to say by the end of 2019, actually the second half of 2019, I was listening to this woman who is a prophet on YouTube, and she would just put out videos of what God was telling her, the messages that God was telling her to release on YouTube. So I would always watch her videos. And just to get inside of what God was telling her and how that can be applicable to my life or so. So she put out a video, and I remember that day I watched it, and the video was "You're in your promised land." So I was watching it, and in the video, she said that many of you are, you're asking God, when is He going to take you to the promised land? When are you going to take you to the promised land? That when is it going to happen? She said many of you, you're in your promised land, but you don't recognize it because you're still going through your situation. So I remember just thinking to myself, like, is this word applicable to me? Now, here's the thing. I honestly believe that God had a place in Atlanta where he wanted me to be. He wanted me and Brandon to be together. I believe Atlanta, or I believe Georgia, is the promised land for me and Brandon. Now, I didn't know where exactly. So I remember just thinking to myself, I'm in my promised land. Like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm at Ruth's place. Ruth was living in Brookhaven at this time. I'm like, I'm trying to piece it up together. So I was like, okay, I'm in Brookhaven. The position I applied to with London was in their Brookhaven office, right? So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm in Brookhaven. The position I applied to with London is in Brookhaven. If I get the job, most likely I would want to stay in Brookhaven. I said, you know what? Let me just start prepping to find my own place. Because at this point, y'all, when I got to Ruth's apartment, I already told myself that I wanted to leave before she finished her semester. So I wanted to leave May, but got a job in April. That was my plan. Get the job in April, leave in May. So I'm like, hey, if I'm going to do that, or if that's going to be the case, I need to start prepping of where I'm going to live. I checked my email, y'all, and I actually heard back from London. They rejected me for the position I applied to, and I was kind of like bummed out, right? But here's the thing: I did not forget what that prophet said on YouTube. So I'm like, you know what? I most likely would be in their Brookhaven office, not in their Smyrna office. So I said, you know what? Let me start looking for apartments. So I go on apartments.com, y'all. Go on apartments.com, looking for apartments in Brookhaven. As I'm looking for apartments in Brookhaven, I see Hidden Valley pop up as part of the list. I'm like, why is Hidden Valley popping up for apartments in Brookhaven? It's in Dunwoody. Now, immediately, that's when it hit me. When I took Melissa and her cousin's friend apartment hunting, June 7th, 2019, I asked for God for something special to happen. Y'all, that special thing was God letting me know that I was going to move to Hidden Valley. I was like, whoa. Now, mind you, I completely forgot about Hidden Valley until Melissa brought it up in December when she told me that her cousin's friend no longer moved to the apartment. I was like, what? So that was a special thing that happened. I had my perception of what that special thing was going to be, and I thought it was going to be me and Brandon communicating. No, it was God showing me the apartment I was going to live in. So at this point, I'm like, okay, if God wants me to move to Hidden Valley, I said, wait, hold on. So I'm like, wait, if God wants me to move to, I'm like, wait, God wants me to move to Hidden Valley. Hold up, hold up. Y'all, Nami worked at a gym that was 4 minutes away from Hidden Valley. So it was located in Perimeter Dunwoody. Brandon also worked out in that gym. So now I'm just putting the pieces together. I'm thinking to myself, if I move to Hidden Valley and Brandon works out at Nami's gym, that's 4 minutes away from Hidden Valley, that's also Perimeter Dunwoody, me and Brandon are going to be close. And also, I'm thinking to myself, What if Hidden Valley is the place that God wants me and Brandon to meet? I'm like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Now it seems like it's making sense. Ah. And I remember being so emotional because y'all, 2019, especially right after graduation, I remember just asking God for clarity. And I believe that's the reason why I asked for God to have something special happen on June 7th because yeah, I was so confused. I was so confused as to what was going on. I didn't know what was going on, y'all. So to believe that, man, even in my confusion, God was still working. God was still God was still bringing clarity even if I didn't know. And I'm like, God, you were always there. You were always there. And I'm so thankful. Even though I didn't know it, I didn't see it, I couldn't comprehend it because God's ways is higher than our ways. I'm like, God, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah. So I'm like, yeah, I am moving to Hidden Valley. So that's the plan. I am moving there after I leave Root's apartment. Hopefully, I can get a job by April. And then May, I'm there and I'm going to be 4 minutes away from Brandon. Okay. And then we can run into each other and bring this whole thing together. That's what I believed was the plan.